Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to be tackling a project that Past Becky has kindly left for me to deal with. So for context, when someone goes to knit, there are two different schools of thought of what this could be. So one is the process knitter, where they don't care what they're knitting, they just knit. They will cast on stuff without knowing what it's going to be. And then there's the progress knitter, where you're knitting in order to complete things. So you're trying to create a project and you want to finish the project, and it's less about exploring what the fiber or yarn is like and more about what can the finished project give to me. So I would say that now I am probably somewhere in between the two. I'm closer to being more of a progress knitter now, where I've gone through the phase where I complete things in succession and want finished projects. But for a good portion of my knitting experience, I was a process knitter. I just wanted to knit. Something in my mind clicked where I actually just enjoyed the action, and it was a way that I was able to regulate my environment in a way. There was a point in my life where I tried to use knitting to replace therapy. That did not work on multiple levels. During the end of my time as mostly a process knitter, I came to the conclusion that if I just would knit for the sake of knitting, it should all just be the same project. Yeah? Why bother casting on and binding off and just having a bunch of one-off little projects everywhere? Why not just have one huge project where all that process is directed? So I started a tube, and I worked on that tube for the next 1 3/4 of the next year. And this is that tube. I call it the monster. It is 31 feet long. And you can see it is quite wide. That hoop is there around the ends of it. While the monster was in full force, it was an amazing project. All these fibers that I collected that I didn't know how to use just went into the monster. It's I didn't have to think about what to do with them anymore. It's I can just experiment and find out what this yarn is like. The legacy of this still reflects in how I do other things, like my yarn crawling. But it was also a very good project for when I wanted to sit in front of the TV and knit while being able to pay attention to what was on the TV. This also traveled to a lot of places with me because I used to knit and crochet during my therapy appointments because it felt uncomfortable to look someone in the eye while I was also trying to delve into my innermost feelings and making sense of them. Towards the end, this had a huge bag that it had to carry, and it came with me to a lot of places. But toward the end of the time that I was working on this, I was in round 2 of college at the time. I was in the process of earning my art history degree at Temple University, and they had a class that I wish I could have taken at the time, but unfortunately I found out about it too late, and I'm not sure if I would have had the proper qualifications because it was definitely for students who had an art portfolio, and as an art history student I did not have one. When I was going to college for my art history degree, my end goal at the time was to start working at a museum. They had this curating class where the people in this class were trying to curate and exhibit out of other students' artwork. And the theme was, I do this weird thing. So it's what's this weird thing that you do that no one else seems to do? And it's well, this. The monster actually ended up in an art exhibition and actually ended up being the main piece or one of the big centerpieces of the exhibition. And I'm going to insert a little picture right here of me with my piece in the exhibition. So that's why this hoop is on here. When the class is trying to figure out how to display my artwork, they got the idea to hang it from the ceiling. So they put this on one end and they hung it up like that. Which, as you can imagine, this is a very old hoop at this point. I don't think it would be able to support it anymore. And after that exhibition happened, I just stopped working on it because it didn't feel right to work on it after it had been on displayed. It's... who knows? I moved on to something else. I think shortly after this happened was when I made the switch from being a process knitter to a mostly progress knitter. Like, this happened before I discovered amigurumi. Like, I'd found stuffed animals, but before I became comfortable crocheting them. And ever since that exhibition, I didn't know what to do with the monster, so it has sat on my bedroom floor. It has been 8 to 9 years. And, I mean, the passage of time is pretty obvious. You can see there's a bunch of dust all over this, and to be quite honest, I think I can say goodbye to it. So that's what this video is. I'm going to go on the ultimate frogging adventure and unwind 1 3/4 years worth of work. If I had to guess how long this may take me, I would say anywhere in the ballpark of 2 to 10 hours. 2 would be super optimistic, hopeful thinking. 10 hours is being more realistic. But in order to give the monster one last good final hurrah, I figured I would unwind it while filming it so I can still appreciate the legacy of the monster for me. The past 7 months I've been restructuring my entire life, so it feels kind of apt to have a moment where I take a physical representation of what my life is like and restructure it too. Now, as for the process of going about this, first I'm going to cut off this bad boy. I don't know if I'm going to save this hoop. Before I saw this little thing not being like this, I thought it may have been worth it, but now I'm not so sure. And then I'm going to unwind it and start frogging on the other end. And the reason why I'm going to start on the other end is because I never cast this guy off. When this was in the exhibition, it was there with a ball of yarn and a set of knitting needles inside. So there's a circular set of metal knitting needles inside of here. For the unwinding process, I think I'm going to use my knitting knotty for the first time and unwind them into skeins of hanks and then use some yarn to tie the skeins up that way. Because as you saw earlier with the purple part with the dust and like the dust in here, this yarn is not clean. I can't in good conscience use any of this yarn in a new project and that I know is going to be like made for commission for somebody or it's going to be given to somebody else without washing it first or without the knowledge that it is going to be a very weird yarn. Like, I know at this point this is all very old yarn and this is all very experimental yarn, so it's not going to be the same quality as if I just bought a new skein like one of these guys. Yeah. In the process, because of the dust factor, I'm going to be wearing a mask while I'm doing it, so that way I'm not breathing all that in and I don't have to spend the next couple days hacking my lungs out. Because I know there's like dust galore and other trappings and whatnot in here. It's time to say goodbye to this little monstrosity and see how it goes. The monster's kaput. Monster is no more. It is now a bunch of loosely wound skeins ready for washing. I want to talk about a couple of them before I end the video. So this particular skein actually has the pom-poms attached to it, this yarn. I was given this one, and to be honest, I haven't seen a yarn like it since. This yarn right here, I take it that this was probably given to me because it's hard to think that I saw this and went, wow, that's something that I want. I mean, when I see the boucle, it makes more sense why I might buy it for the texture, but this is one of the ugliest yarns I've ever seen. It is not the ugliest, but it is very, very unlike me. And to be honest, I wasn't crazy about how it worked up. And then, as for some of the worst yarns to untangle, this bad boy right here was torture. This was also torture, which was sad because I actually really love the texture of this yarn. This is one of the softest things I've ever touched. And the fact that it kept grabbing on itself and ripping, that's why I gave up on it. That's also why I didn't pull this one out, why this one's still in this thing, because this is actually the same texture as the purple yarn, and I thought, well, I could end up with a bunch of, when it started doing the same thing, I could end up with a bunch of short ends that wouldn't work, or I could try to rework it in this form and still maintain some of the softness. So I think I'm going to try that with this, because I actually really love this color and really love this texture. That's also why this was sacrificed, was because of this guy. When I realized that this guy was turning out like this guy, but worse, I just decided, instead of trying to unravel it, to just cut my losses, literally, and take it off the least painful way possible. Now these two skeins right here are from some of the oldest yarn I've ever had in my stash. And with this, when this entered the monster, I'd already had this yarn for quite some time. I don't think it would be an exaggeration to say that this yarn is possibly 20 years old. It never goes away! I don't know what to do with it now. But they're amazing colors. Like, actually, this yarn was part of the first vest I'd ever made. I stranded these together with some white. This yarn had a bunch of holes in it, which is why I had to pull it out piece by piece and then knot it together. Its color is the only saving grace here, but I think this yarn just simply disintegrated. It's a single ply woolish yarn, I think. It doesn't have the integrity anymore, so I'm probably going to have to work this up really thickly if I want this to hold on to anything. Now this yarn took more time than I was expecting it to, but this is probably the yarn I'm most excited to work with again. I love this metallic-y look to it. And it feels like soft and amazing too. It's not really scratchy. Although the one downside of this yarn is the fact that you can see it the inside is constantly pulling out if it catches from the outside, which leaves these like black rings of fiber around certain parts that I had to take off during the process. But I remember like back like middle school, high school, I forget how old I was, I did a collage of Medusa. I remember using this exact type of yarn to make the snakes. So very fond memories for this yarn. And this yarn right here was surprisingly easy to take off. Like after all that time that I had trying to like yank all the yarn out, I thought this was going to catch on everything, and I'm happily surprised that it didn't. And they don't really make yarn like that anymore. It's eyelash yarn, but it's soft. It's not super scratchy. Yeah, this was like another yarn. It's like the chenille yarn, except it's like softer. It's not like how Bernat makes it today. Another thing that didn't occur to me until after I started doing this process was how strange it felt to be wearing my mask without my glasses. Now, most of the time when I wear a mask, I'm wearing a mask out of the house, and I never leave the house without my glasses because I need my glasses to see far away. However, I don't really need glasses to see anything close, which is why if you're watching a video of mine where I'm not out of the house, you don't really see me without my glasses because on average it's about 4 feet away, and I don't really need my glasses for things that far away unless they're small. If I'm leaving the house, I will always be wearing my glasses, which is why you would see my glasses in the videos, such as when I go on yarn crawls. Wearing a mask is nothing new to me because at my last job, I was working during the pandemic, so I spent 10 hours at a time wearing a face mask, which is why I now have a huge collection of reusable face masks, because I wasn't going to be spending money just to constantly replace them over and over again. But just the fact like, oh yeah, the glasses aren't there. That's weird. That's really weird. Although I am thankful the mask was there because, as predicted, it was very, very dusty, especially towards the end. As you can see, it's how much dust literally came off. And I'm glad that didn't really go into my nose, except for the one time where the mask just stopped working and I decided to continue without the mask instead of reasonably stopping. I regretted that the next 24 hours. But towards the end of this last stretch here, it got to the point where this snot just started coming down. It's like, I'm glad the mask's hiding this because I don't really want that on film. It also got to the point where if I had opened my mouth, I would have involuntarily tasted the snot, which if I was 8 years old, I wouldn't have minded that so much, but 30-year-old Becky's not that crazy about that. Speaking of past Becky, I found a piece of paper inside, and I don't know what I was thinking. Like, I can tell from the drawing style that it's me. I'm the one who did this. And I'm not sure what I was trying to do here. So, one side has like the handicap sign person, which it looks like I was trying to copy something. But the other side has this bisected face. It's like it's a mask, but not quite a mask. Almost like I'm trying to show a skull. I don't know what was going on there. I can also tell from the line work that I used a mechanical pencil for that because the lines are thinner than they would be if it was a wooden pencil. And they never go into a thicker line. Like a mechanical pencil, the lead is always the same width, but if I was using a regular pencil at some point, there would be some really thick lines in there. Despite how concerning that may be though, past Becky has left more concerning things. That's not terribly weird for me. That's not one that's going to make me scratch my head as much as some of the other stuff that past me has left behind for me to find. I now can say I know how to use this. I didn't realize I was going to be giving myself good practice of learning how to wind a hank, so new skill learned. Very excited for that. I figured out how to make this work for me, like fell into a rhythm. And now I'm going to be faced with the task of having to wash those skeins of yarn, which will not be happening this video. This video will have already been going on long enough. I'm excited to give new life to all this yarn. And I feel like I've removed a permanent source of chaos from my bedroom floor, which is also good. Anyway, I need to now go human because my back is not happy with me right now. My mind is happy with me, but my back is not. So anyway, that was today's entertainment. Have a nice day.